Welcome to today's lesson on evaluating the impact of environmental changes on the distribution of species in an ecosystem. Today, we will explore how variations in environmental factors can affect where different species are found, given the right information to make these evaluations. Our lesson for today includes examining specific environmental factors like temperature, water availability, and pH levels, and how they influence species distribution. We'll also look at real-world examples to understand these impacts better and discuss the importance of biodiversity and its role in ecosystem stability. So far, we have explored how species adjust to their environments and rely on each other for survival. This knowledge is crucial because understanding the basics of ecology and interdependence allows us to appreciate how sensitive ecosystems can be to changes and how species distributions may shift as a response. Introducing the concept of evaluating environmental impacts on species distribution links theoretical knowledge with practical ecological challenges. This insight is essential for making informed conservation decisions and understanding the dynamic nature of ecosystems in our changing world. Let's get started. To begin with, let's clarify what is meant by distribution of species. The distribution of species refers to how populations of plants, animals, and other organisms are spread out across different habitats and regions. Environmental changes can have significant impacts on where organisms can live, survive, and thrive. Three primary environmental changes that affect species distribution are the availability of water, temperature changes, and atmospheric gases. First, let's discuss the availability of water. Water is a fundamental necessity for all living organisms. Changes in water availability can drastically alter species distribution. There are factors that affect water distribution. These include seasonal variations. Periods of drought or heavy rainfall can shift the habitats in which species can live. For example, plants and animals in arid regions may move closer to water sources during dry periods. Water availability is also affected by human activities. Activities like irrigation, dam construction, and water extraction can impact local ecosystems by altering natural water distribution. Another primary environmental change that affects species distribution is temperature change. Temperature plays a crucial role in the survival and distribution of species. Species are affected by shifts in average temperature. Climate change is causing shifts in average temperatures around the globe. Species that are adapted to specific temperature ranges may find their habitats becoming unsuitable. Migration and adaptation. Some species may migrate to cooler or warmer areas to find suitable living conditions. For example, certain fish species have been observed moving to cooler waters as ocean temperatures rise. The final key environmental change which affects species are atmospheric gases. The composition of atmospheric gases can also influence species distribution. The major factors are air pollution. Pollutants like sulfur dioxide from industrial processes can affect sensitive species. For instance, lichens cannot grow in polluted areas. An increase in air pollution can lead to a decrease in lichen populations in affected regions. Greenhouse gases. The emission of greenhouse gases contributes to global warming, affecting climate patterns and consequently altering habitats. It is important to distinguish between natural environmental changes and those caused by human activities. Natural changes can include seasonal shifts, volcanic eruptions, natural wildfires, and other phenomena that occur without human intervention. These changes can cause temporary or permanent shifts in species distribution. Human-induced changes, which include activities like deforestation, pollution, urban development, and agriculture, have more lasting and often more severe impacts on ecosystems. Human actions contribute significantly to climate change, which affects species on a global scale. Let's look at some real-world examples to understand the impact of these changes. Coral reefs and ocean temperatures. Rising ocean temperatures due to global warming have led to coral bleaching, where corals expel the algae living in their tissues, causing them to turn white and often die. This affects the entire reef ecosystem and the species that rely on it. Arctic species and melting ice. The melting of polar ice caps due to rising temperatures has threatened species like polar bears and seals that depend on ice-covered regions for hunting and breeding. To evaluate the impact of environmental changes on species distribution, consider the following steps. Collect data. Gather information on environmental conditions, temperature, water availability, pollution levels, and species distribution, population sizes, migration patterns. Analyze trends. Look for correlations between environmental changes and shifts in species distribution. Predict consequences. Use models to predict future changes in species distribution based on current environmental trends. Implement conservation strategies. Develop and implement strategies to mitigate negative impacts, such as creating protected areas, restoring habitats, and reducing pollution. Let's work through a question to consolidate our knowledge on evaluating the impact of environmental changes on the distribution of species in an ecosystem. Let's consider an aquatic ecosystem, where industrial pollution has led to an increase in water acidity. Evaluate how this environmental change might impact the distribution of species in this ecosystem. There are 4 main points to outline in our evaluation. 1. Species with low tolerance for acidic conditions, such as certain fish or aquatic plants, may decline or disappear from the ecosystem. 2. Some acid-tolerant species or opportunistic organisms, like certain algae, might become more prevalent. 3. Fish populations may migrate to less acidic waters, while acidophilic, acid-loving organisms could colonize the polluted areas. 4. Conclusion. Increased water acidity can heavily affect species distribution, favoring those adapted to acidic conditions and harming those that are not. In today's lesson, we examined how environmental changes impact species distribution within ecosystems. We started by defining how distribution of species means how populations of organisms are spread out through habitats or regions. We then discussed some key abiotic factors and how changes in these factors may affect species distributions. This included water availability, temperature changes, and the composition of atmospheric gases. We noted how these changes can either be natural or caused by humans, with human impacts tending to be more dramatic and longer lasting. We discussed real-world examples, rising ocean temperatures and melting ice caps on changes in species distributions. We discussed methods used to evaluate the effect of environmental changes on species distributions, which involved collecting data, analysing trends, and predicting outcomes of environmental effects. This can be used to inform effective conservation strategies from species at risk from environmental change. Overall, knowing how environmental factors can affect species distributions is fundamental for our understanding of ecology and in implementing effective conservation practices. It makes us aware of the dramatic impacts that humans can have on ecosystems by changing our environments,